That was one of our questions actually about how we can use the happy equation to try and tackle some of the world's problems, whether it be racial injustice or climate change. But you've answered that really nicely. Thank you. Another interesting thought we had was around, there was a really good reference in the book about kind of the base level of happiness you reach once you earn within like a certain threshold. So I think it was about $70,000. Once you reach that point, going far beyond it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to become happier. With that in mind, do you think we should embrace ideas like universal basic income?
I don't think we have a choice. So my second book, Scary Smart, talks about the rise of artificial intelligence and how society will change as a result. And I can promise you, we have no other choice other than universal basic income. But interestingly, anything that you force on or give people, remember the happiness equation, is not necessarily going to deliver the result that you want when it comes to happiness, because happiness is a choice. Let me try to explain that. So the closest you get to universal basic income is Scandinavian countries, where you don't get people who are very, very rich, and you don't get people who are poor. Everyone has a very high standard of living. They call it subjective well-being. So you're provided with healthcare and job security and pension and so on and so forth. And taxes are so steep that if you're making a lot of money as a successful entrepreneur or businessman, you still are equalized a little bit. So the gaps are not massive. And so yet uh, there are some of the highest, not in all of them, but in some of them, we have the highest suicide rates across the world, right? Interestingly, in a place like Norway, for example, we have a staggering high number of women suicide, which is not high across the world in general. And so when you start to look at those, you realize that it's not just giving people their basic needs. I mean, the closest you can get to giving people all of their basic needs is a very high subjective well-being, and yet that doesn't get people to feel happy. The reason for that is very straightforward, is because when our needs are met to a certain extent, our expectations go higher. Our expectations are likely to go like, okay, if you can give me this, this, and that, also make my girlfriend love me and make my teenage daughter not fight with me, right? And so when with that rise of expectations, the happiness equation breaks again, not because events are not great, but because your expectations are high. Having said that, so this is to answer the question of, would a universal basic income or an action from a government that allows us to feel secure make us happy? No, it wouldn't, right? Having said that, on the other hand, I think an action on our side would make us happy. The universal, the statistic of $70,000 is basically the average income in the U.S. So the average household income, and it is not a secret that beyond that point, yes, you can buy more toys, but more toys don't make you happy for very long, right? So the choice in itself is, how much of my life do I need to exchange for money, okay, or for things, really? And to remember deep inside that the actual asset that you have, the actual scarce resource that you have, is life. Okay, it's not money or things. Believe it or not, most of us forget this. Most of us forget that by the time we finish this conversation, 1 hour of your life has gone. Okay, and that 1 hour, believe it or not, is the most scarce resource you will ever have, because it never comes back. And so the capitalist system has taught us to sell that hour for money, to sell that hour by working 8 hours a day or 10 hours or whatever, or if you're an entrepreneur and working 16-hour days, 7 days a week, you're selling those hours for money. And the wiser ones of us will question, how many of my hours do I want to sell to get how much, and beyond that, how many of those hours do I want to live fully? Okay, live a life that goes beyond just making more money. Now, of course, some of us will say, "Oh, but I love my job." So, for example, what you guys are doing are amazing, and probably most people that would be interested in a book club would be, really into reading and so on. Perfect, do that, but don't do it for money. right? When it comes to money, we need to become quite clever in terms of how much of our life do we sell to money, right? And of course, the other side of money, if you ask me, is fear, right? So the other reason why people want to make more money is not just to buy more toys, but simply because they're afraid that the money might run out. You know, I always give that example openly. When I was leaving Google X, which was 2018, so not a long time ago, my book was already published. I was a reasonably established, happy person, and I asked myself, what if you run out of money? Okay, but I've been at Google for a while. I've made reasonable amounts of money. As I always say, I wear $4 t-shirts, so I'm not really, I don't really need a lot of money to live. And yet my brain started to go into scenarios of like, okay, I live half of the year in Dubai. What if Iran disagrees royally with Israel and there is a nuclear war and then I have no place to live? And I go into those weird scenarios because my brain wants to feel safe, right? And so accordingly, most of us will say, if I have $100, maybe I should have another 100 just to be safe. And when you get to 200, you say, oh no, I want 400 just to be safe. And you keep playing that game. And the question really is, are we ever safe? And so once again, what is the amount of money that you need to keep selling your life for so that you get safe enough to tell yourself, well, if things go wrong, I have 6 to 8 months of savings and maybe I can sell a couple of things so I have a year. And beyond that, maybe I'm safe enough already. I don't need to go crazy about it. I know this is a very long answer to a very simple question. Money will never make you happy unless you give it away, to be very honest. Okay. And so, but money is a necessity that we need in life. And until and unless you actually become very, very specific about how much money do you need and how much of your life are you willing to sell for that, you might actually end up in a hedonic treadmill that never really ends.